यार ये बिलियनर्स ना बेवकूफ नहीं है. Motivation is actually just a dopamine spike. Feeling and emotions cannot be consistent day on day. And as Nike says, just do it. Uncertainty is the villain. Should I do it today? Should I skip? कल करते हैं यार. The mind is lazy by nature. If you don't want to be boring, then be prepared to fail. Mediocrity is a choice. Brain prefers fantasy over friction. Systems and processes very powerful in actually building the change that you want to become. Fortunately, I would say missed by does not come. When there is no system, your brain will start negotiation. If that routine is delivered, that is where you get the reward. Human race has always survived on hope.
So what exactly makes systems so powerful? Welcome to the second episode. Today we are questioning a very popular belief that motivation leads to success. This conversation is about why motivation fades and why system are what truly last. Joining us again is Mr. Tanwir Alam, CEO and founder of Filcard. Thank you, sir. Tanvir sir, you often say that motivation doesn't create success. Systems do. Why do you feel so?
Motivation feels very powerful when you wake up in the morning and you want to really change the world and you feel that I can fix everything. But the problem with that motivation is that it's emotional and an emotion fluctuate. It also depends on how you sleep, your stress levels, your mood, and even how the day starts. At a deeper level, motivation is actually just a dopamine spike that happens. It makes you feel good, but it's not a strategy. That dopamine spikes gives you an excitement but lacks consistency. Now, this might push you to get things started, but it may not help you conclude things in the same intensity. Okay. So because the success feels how you feel on that particular day, and that feeling and emotions cannot be consistent day on day, and hence this is not sustainable. So it is not a strategy. So I would say just show up, and as Nike says, just do it.
So you are saying that motivation is not something you can rely on. What else do you suggest?
See, uncertainty is the villain. When there is no system, your brain will start negotiation. Should I do it today? Should I skip? कल करते हैं यार. And that uncertainty is something which really is a big roadblock. Now, our brain wants things to be decided, and what does systems do that? They remove all kind of negotiation. Once something is decided, the mind stops fighting you.
Sir, you have said before that motivation is a visitor. What do you really mean by that?
See, motivation is an important factor, but not the deciding factor. Okay. Motivation comes and goes, and they are not consistent. What is consistent is forming a system, is forming a habit. The moment you form a habit, that habit transforms and that helps you to achieve your life goals. Now, for example, let us take an example of learning how to drive a car. When you start learning how to drive a car, you will struggle to get the clutch, brake, accelerator coordination in place, and many times you'll see your car stopping suddenly. You leave the accelerator and all this, but once you get trained and the subconscious part of your brain gets trained, it becomes a natural habit. And when it becomes a natural habit, you've seen people doing multitasking while driving also. So that is the role of building a habit. So motivation gets you to start learning to drive. Habit formation helps you to continue to drive.
So what you are saying is that success is less about being ready, but more about being regular.
Exactly. Life does not reward readiness, it rewards reliability.
So what exactly makes systems so powerful?
This is what I call as the subconscious shift. Now, this is how I have used in my life for training myself for a half marathon. See, your conscious part of the brain is just 5%. The subconscious part is 95%. The subconscious part does not really know the difference between the real happening and the feeling of real happening. So if you start seeing yourself, people talk about visualization. If you visualize yourself that you're running a half marathon, that's only one part. That gives a dopamine spike. That's the motivation that we talk about. But it cannot last forever. So you set up a system of ensuring that you do this boring repetitive things again and again. And let me tell you, the mind is lazy by nature. If you start any new habit, it will try to resist and stop you from doing it. But if you create a system, for example, my system, I used to keep my morning gym clothes and morning running clothes ready by night. So whenever I wake up, first thing I see this and I feel, okay, I have to go. My mind gets a clue. So doing this over a period of time, I trained my subconscious mind that this is my part of my life. After the initial resistance that the brain had, it then started realigning to my new self. And that realigning will not happen on 1 2 days. Let me tell you. If you do it for 30 to 4 times, repetitions, you will become a bit familiar. If you do it 60 to 80 times, this will come naturally to you. But if you do it consistently over 100 repetitions or more, that becomes your identity. And that is where you even start missing if you're not doing those activities. That becomes your second self. So it means you've trained your subconscious mind. So it happens in wealth creation as well. So let us take the formula of 15 into 15 into 15. That will make your crorepati very easily. So you invest 15,000 rupees a month for 15 years consistently without a break for at compounding at 15% per annum, you generate a 1 crore rupees. This is a simple hack. So this is what can be replicated to even any larger goals that you have. So first you decide the goal, decide the system, and consistently follow that. You create a hack for your brain in achieving anything and everything, even a big, hairy, audacious goal.
So you are saying that system is less about intensity but more about structure.
Certainly, consistency beats intensity every time. One fine morning, if I wake up, I want to run even 10 kilometers, it will have no effect. But if I decide that I will do only 30 minutes run or 20 minutes run 3 times a week, religiously, week on week, week on week, week on week, and you'll realize that you have overcome a big goal. Now, there is a myth, rather, I would say, that people say you can train your mind or a behavior in 21 days. It's actually a myth. It was developed by plastic surgeon, Dr. Maxwell Waltz. And according to him, this is a philosophy that he said in 21 days, people got accustomed to the new face or a new part that was put into themselves. But there's no science behind it. On the contrary, in 2009, University of London, they formed that if you actually perform anything consistently for 66 days, there is a huge propensity that they'll form a habit. So it is that consistency of activities that drive result and not the intensity.
And that's the part that people struggle with, right? The boring part.
Being boring is the only recipe of being successful in life. If you don't want to be boring, then be prepared to fail. Now, that's a choice that you have to make. Mediocrity is a choice. यार ये billionaires ना बेवकूफ नहीं है. Neither they are successful by luck or chance. They are successful because they have actually lived their life in systems. And that systems is boring. So they do the boring thing repeatedly every day, waking up at a fixed time, sleeping at a fixed time, following a strict regiment, and that is what has made them successful. So if you're not boring, then be prepared to fail.
So what are your thoughts about the dichotomy between motivation and system?
See, motivation is extremely important to get you started. It helps you to paint the vision of your future self, the vision board that you talk about. Now, but to make it happen, when reality strikes, that you realize that there are a lot of friction. There's a set routine, schedule. You have to live in a new form, and that is what I say. The brain prefers fantasy over friction. So if you are able to overcome that friction will help you to change to a new identity, and that new identity will help you to achieve your goal. But changing that new identity requires system. Let me explain with my own example. I started running and I graduated from 3, 5, and 10 kilometers. I was struggling to get my half marathon completed. I used to get fatigued at 15, 16 kilometers. It was that time that I actually hired a coach and he gave me a plan which talked about how I should be running in the week, in the month. It actually reduced my running time. And in 3 months' time, I could actually successfully complete my first half marathon. That is why I think I realize that systems and processes are very powerful in actually building the change that you want to become.
So that was very moving. So, but what would you say to people who say कि यार ये system कुछ नहीं होता? What is written in my fate will happen anyway.
The brain prefers fantasy over friction. Motivation is what gets you started. It gives a dopamine spike, and that's where you fantasize your vision and goal. But when reality strikes, that how are you going to achieve those goals? The action plan. That's where the friction comes. So now you will have to ensure that you overcome that friction by changing your identity. और ये आइडेंटिटी आप कैसे चेंज करेंगे? इसके लिए भी एक सिस्टम which called CRR. You have to have a cue of what you want to do. R would be a routine, and then R is the reward. My reward of my running journey was I was very successful in running 10, 12, 14, 15 kilometer at best, but I had the aspiration of vision of running 21 kilometers, half marathon more often. And with my own plan, I used to struggle at 14, 15. And that is where actually I had a coach. And he gave me a vision, or rather plan, which was completely different from what I had. And that change of plan helped me to build it in such a way, and I followed that routine that created a new identity for myself, and I could successfully complete the half marathon. So I feel that motivation is important, but it is the system which will actually fulfill the motivation that you started with. Okay. So motivation is that spark, and system is the engine that help you complete. Both are equally important, and that's the core ingredient for your new change identity.
Wow, that was amazing. Now, this is for our viewers. And, we have talked about systems a lot till now. But what if someone is listening and they want to, build a system for themselves? How would they go about doing so?
I would start with a quote that fortune favors the brave. And let me further explain it with an anecdote. People who watch cricket at my age, they would have seen Kambli and both Sachin Tendulkar play. And they both were equally talented, both equally successful at this stage. And after that initial success, Sachin stayed course and followed the system that he had. And somehow, Vinod calmly lost that focus on that system. And we have seen that Sachin has become hugely successful and icon in itself, which possibly an opportunity I would say missed by Vinod Kamli. So now you may want to believe that it is fate. कि भाई, if Kamli was not destined and Sachin was destined, that's the choice that you would have to make. From my perspective, I would say that Sachin followed the system, and that is why he's where he is, and calmly disobeyed the system, and where he is, it's choice of the system. So yes, that system was a reason, and that system is highly scalable. You can extrapolate the system to building your good health, building wealth for yourself, building a business. You're an entrepreneur, even building your career if you are an employee. They all governed by system, and that's a great distinguishing factor became between a highly successful and a mediocre person. Now, that was truly enlightening. So, now for someone who is listening to this podcast right now and they feel they are not lazy, they are just stuck in what they are doing. What one simple system building exercise they can start this week? Yes, I'm glad you used the word simple, because most people fail by making systems that are too complicated. And over time, I've realized that the system works best when they respect how brain actually functions. So I have used a mental model and I call it simple. The first part is start small. When you have a big goal, that big goal is sounds uncertain to the brain. It triggers your amygdala, which is a fear center. That leads to inconsistent effort, and in some point of time, this also leads to procrastination. Okay. So what you could do is break down your large goal and journal them into the smallest version of what you could do today, and take those baby steps. Now, for example, if you want to finish a book, start reading 2 pages a day. If you want to start big, also become a long distance runner, start by running 10 minutes. So this small consistent effort done consistently over a period of time compounds. The second part, I, stands for identity first. Now, habit sticks when they are connected to who you believe you are. So instead of asking, what do I want to do? Ask who you want to become. For example, I want to be a runner. I want to be an investor. I want to be a businessman. So all this behavior aligns with identity, and the effort reduces. Because in the basal ganglia part of your brain, this identity helps you in automating the effort. And when you automate the effort, you reduce friction and you ensure that you're moving towards the desired vision of your own self that you want to become. M stands for make it easy. Now, the brain follows the part of least friction or effort. Now, if it feels very hard, you'll avoid it. even if you deeply care about that outcome. So you have to reduce the friction, keep things visible. For example, if I really want to run, I keep my running shoes ready one night before. I keep my clothes ready. So when I wake up, I don't have to look for them. If I like reading, I ensure that my book is next to my pillow on my bedside table so that it's very handy to even read few pages a day. I think the reason we have to do this is it becomes a part of your DNA. And by removing this barrier and make it easy, you make it automatic. P stands for pre-decide. Now, if you actually pre-decide and plan, you eliminate the trouble of making your brains to decide. The moment you take that away, that negotiation with the brain gets eliminated. Now, for example, I have a plan of doing strength training on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. My runs are on Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. It's pre decided. It helps me to stay course. I also decide, okay, I want to have sweets on weekend only and not have on weekdays. So, whatever be the plan, if you pre decide, it helps you to stay on course and the probability of it happening increases multiple fold. The next is link triggers. We have spoken about basal ganglia and we have spoken about cue. So your habits actually get triggered with that cue also. It runs in a loop. So cue, routine, and reward. If you use that cue to actually do something repeatedly, that becomes a routine. And if that routine is delivered, that is where you get the reward. So linking triggers ensures that you consciously move an effort into an autopilot mode. In a way, you're not creating a new routine, you're stacking on an old one. And finally, enjoy small wins. The brain repeats what it gets rewarded for. If you acknowledge and celebrate this win, this habit gets reinforced and strengthened. People quit not because of a lack of motivation, but because of not celebrating their small successes. For example, when I started running, it was difficult for me to run even 200 meters. When I ran 3 kilometers, I really celebrated. And when I ran 5, it was a big celebration, and 10, and then a top. So each milestone should be celebrated. Why? Because this dopamine is actually what keeps you moving to the next milestone. Human race has always survived on hope. That celebration gives you hope for the next milestone.
Wow, that simple was simply fabulous. Now, if people are following this simple, what usually changes for them?
This concept called snowballing effect. If you remember a small part of snow from the very hilltop starts rolling down and it keeps rolling down over a period of time, it keeps accumulating more snow with it and it keeps becoming a big ball. That's called a snowballing effect. Okay. It exactly happens with following any routine in a simple format that we have defined. It compounds significantly, and that when habit compounds, magic happens.
Okay, sir. Now, one line to close this episode.
Okay. See, everybody wants to become wealthy, but उसी तरह लेकिन सबको जन्नत चाहिए लेकिन मरना किसी को नहीं.
So, that's a powerful note to end on. Thank you, Tanvir sir.